So in this video, we are going to build a complete CRUD applications together. So let's see what are the features we are going to cover in this video. So user can add the detail like final user, final @gmail.com, date of birth we could select. As of now, let's take this date, mail, education, postgraduate, company, Google, pack, experience 4, package 12. Click on save so you can see record added successfully. You can see the last record 201 final user added successfully. We could also update this record like male to female, date of birth. Let's change the date of birth and also update the package to 125. Once hit the update button, here you could see the record is updated. Let's refresh this page. By default, it's showing on ascending order. We could also sort this in descending order. Here you could see the detail. We could also filter the record like final, and we could delete this record as well. So for building these applications, what are the technology we are going to use? So we will use Angular 15, Angular Material for UI designing, and also we'll use JSON server for building the backend and REST API without any coding. So these are the features we are going to cover in this video. So let's get right into it without any further delay. So hi guys, it's me Tariq Akhtar Ansari. So now let's start. I'm going to generate my Angular application inside this coding folder. So here I'll generate my Angular applications. So the first thing, let's clear the URL and type CMD so that we could open CMD inside this folder. So here you could see I'm inside E drive and coding folder. Here I'll generate Angular application ng new. But before that, let me show you the version ng version. Here you could see that I have Angular CLI version 15.0.1, which is the latest as of now, and Node version is 16.16, and you could see all other versions. So now let's generate application ng new CRUD app. Would you like to add routing? Yes. CSS, I'm going to use SCSS. So application generated successfully. Now let's open this in VS Code. So first of all, let's go inside this folder, cd, and type code dot. Now let's open terminal. For opening the terminal, we have two ways to open that. You can go here and click on new terminal, or you can also type control and tilde symbol, control plus tilde. Now let me run this application. So for running this, we have command ng serve. And if you want to open in browser, you can also type -o. So now here you can see our application compiled successfully, and also you can see the output in the browser. Perfect. Now let's add Angular material to this project. Okay, open the browser, go to material.angular.io. Now click on get started. And here you will find the command to install this Angular material in the project. And make sure guys, right now, the latest version of Angular is Angular 15.0.3. Okay, just copy this and add in your project. Now let me open one more terminal. So I'll click here on plus icon, and I love to organize everything. So let me name this first terminal Angular, and I'll name the second one CLI. Okay, so let's go to the CLI and type this command ng add @angular slash material. So this will add Angular material in our project. So now it is also automatically detected the package Angular 15 is going to be installed. Would you like to proceed? So if I say yes, it will start installing these packages. Now here we could choose pre-built theme, or if you want to create the custom theme, we could also choose the option custom here. But let's go with the pre-built theme indigo/pink, this one. And it will ask few more questions like set up the global Angular material typography style. Let's say yes. Include and enable animation. Yes. So it's updating the package.json file. Package installed successfully and everything is done. Now let's check Angular CLI. It is also fine. Now let's start. So before starting, let's go back to Angular Material websites. Now click on components. Now first thing we want to build is the header. For the header, we are going to use toolbar. Now we have many examples, plenty of examples here. We could use any one of them. So now let's go with the basic toolbar, this one. So what we want, in our left side, we'll just give the title. Like in our case, we'll give CRUD app, and the right side, we'll add one button. So we could also copy this one, toolbar, copy this here, minimize it. Let's go to the app, and first component is the default component. Now let's delete all the codes, including router outlet. Let's delete everything as of now. And we pasted this toolbar code. Now this is not going to work, guys. You'll start seeing the failed because we haven't added any module. So now let's add the module first. So go back to the Angular material, click on API, copy this module import, come back to your app module.ts, and here you need to add that. Okay, mat toolbar module, and also add inside imports array. Save this. Still you can see it's failing because of mat icon. If you see inside this toolbar, we are not only using the toolbar selector, we are also using mat icon. For that, we need to also go to the component, click on icons, and click on API. We need to also import this module because we are using it. So we need to import it. Let's import this here as well. Okay. Now here you could see compiled successfully. Now let's check the output. Yep, it's completely like it's not looking as we expected. Now, whenever you install Angular Material, it's highly recommended that recompile your applications. Let me recompile it again. Now this time I don't want to open the browser, so let me remove -o option and I'll just run ng-serve. So app recompiled successfully. Now let's check it again. Now this time if I refresh, I get this look, right? This is much better, but still we are getting this because we haven't imported the button module. Now let's come back to the code and import one more thing, mat button module. If you don't get auto suggestions, let's import it directly from here instead of this button, mat button module. Perfect. Now save it, come back here, refresh it. Now here you could see it's looking much better. Now if you notice that we don't have any gaps, if you see the actual one, mat dialog, let's go back to the dialog toolbar actually. Okay. In this example here you could see there is a gap. So we haven't copied the CSS. So let's copy this CSS example from here in our application and paste it here. If I check the output, you could see the gap between. Now let's delete the extra thing. Like we don't need this hamburger icon and we don't need these icons. Let's go back to the code, remove the extra thing, this hamburger. We need space between these two elements. So let's keep this span as same it is. Now let me define again a button and material button. We need to add one mat directive mat raised button. Okay. We could give title like add employee. That's all. Now let's go back and see here. We are getting this in a white color. If we want to make it primary, then add one more color primary. Now let's look at this. It's looking fine. But we don't want this button as primary. Keep it as white, default color. And we want to make this toolbar as primary color. So let's make it color primary. Save this. Now here you could see this coming on primary color. Instead of my app, let's add it CRUD app or application. CRUD application. Perfect. So our header is ready. Now let's work on add employee. So whenever I'll click on add employee button, I want to open a dialog box. Inside that, I want to load add employee component. I'll use the same component like for add and edit. So now let's generate first employee add edit component. Let's go to the CLI ng generate component emp add edit. So component created successfully. Now we need to first import the module mat dialog module. If it doesn't shows, we could also import manually. Import mat dialog module from @angular material slash dialog. Perfect. So we imported mat dialog successfully. Now it has one service. Let's use that here in app component. So now let's first create constructor private. Let's inject underscore dialog. I always use underscore for like dependency injected variables. So mat dialog. So it's easy to like differentiate. This is a service variable, right? Now let me create open add edit emp form. I'm very poor in giving names, but it's the, don't worry. Use and it has one method open, and inside that you need to pass the component which you want to open inside a dialog box. So here I'm going to use emp add edit component. That's all. Now save it. Go to Angular CLI and see this. So it's compiled successfully. Now let's see the output in the browser. If I click, nothing is working because I just defined this method, but we need to execute this function when we click on add employee button. Let's bind with the click event. So anyone will click on this add employee button, this method will be executed and it will open dialog. So now here you could see this emp add edit works here. Perfect. So now let's work on this employee add edit form. So mat dialog has three things. Let me tell you. So let me first create three divs. This will be used for mat dialog title. In the middle, we'll use mat dialog content, and the last one we'll use for mat dialog actions. Now let me tell you what is the difference between these three. So we'll use this part for giving the title. Like in our case, let's give the title employee form, and we'll use action for creating two buttons here like cancel and save. Let's create button mat raise button cancel, and for save we'll use also mat raise button save, but the color we'll want different for the save button. So let's color primary we'll use for the save. So action is done. So action always come in the bottom with the two buttons like cancel and primary, and header is also done. And the content we'll use for defining our form element. Let's save it. Let's first check the output. Here you could see we have two button cancel, save, and we could also see the title employee form. Perfect. So far so good. So now let's for defining the form control, we'll use material. So we'll use form fields. Now here you could see these are the fields we are going to use for the select. Now the first thing we need to import this module in our module. Let's go to the app module. Imported this. Now let's copy the example code here. Not this one. I will use this code. Only the first one. I'm going to use this mat form field inside our employee add edit component. Now let's paste it here. Save it. Now let's check it. Now here you could see there is some issues in the form. You know why? Because we are using mat input as well and we haven't imported mat input module. Now we need to import that as well. So let's import mat input module. We are not getting any auto suggestions, so we need to import. Let's copy this, paste it again, and change this from the form field to input. And let's change this to mat input module. Perfect. Now save this. Now let's again check the output. Now it's working fine. Perfect. Now we don't want a simple one. We want outline. So we'll use, instead of fill, we'll use. Now let's see the difference between. So this is the outline. Now if I'm using outline, here you could see there's something issue with the top. Okay, we'll resolve that later on. Let's first. So in actually what I want, in each row I want two elements. So let's define one div, and inside that I'll keep this. Okay. So div class row. So in each row I want two form element. Let me copy this and paste it here. And this will be the first name, last name. Okay. By default type will be text. We don't need to mention. And also we could mention placeholder. So here I'm giving like example technical. In the same way we could give example here. The last name Baba. Apart from text, if you have any other type of input, then definitely define it. For the text, you can skip this. This is optional. Now you can see it's coming side by side, but there is an issue. Like we don't have any gap. Row class is applying. So let's define this row class here. Display flex gap. I'll keep the gap of 10 px. Perfect. So far so good. Now we want the margin from the top. Okay. So for that, what I will do inside the content, I'll use one class, uh, content. Let me add padding inside this class. Let's keep this class in top. I haven't used dot. Let's define the padding top. Now here you could see the text are proper visible. Now let's repeat the same process. I'll use the row. This time I'll use email, and the type will be email. Example test @ gmail.com. Perfect. Now here I'll use date of birth. For date of birth, we'll not use form field. We are going to use some other material component, which is date picker. Date picker. This one. We'll use this component. Okay. Now for using this, we need to import this module in our own module. Actually, we need to import two modules, not only this one. Let's first import this here. And also we need one more module, mat native date module. If you don't import, you'll get some issues, and in the error you will get the message. Okay, so I imported this too. Now fine. Now let's copy the code. So let's go to the example code here. This one, looks perfect. Let's copy this one. Now let's remove this second row, and here I'm going to add this one. Perfectly fine. Now let's see this output. It's working or not. Yep. As of now, you can see first name, last name, email, and choose date. Here we see two problems. First of all, it's not coming outline. Outlines are not coming, and also it's taking a little more space. So let's first fix the outline. Instead of fill, we'll use perfect. So outline issue is resolved. Now the issue is like the space. So every form field is coming inside row. Okay. This is also a form field. So what I'll do inside a row, because I'm using SCSS, so I'll define a style inside a row for this form field, not class, directly to I'll apply to the form field width 100%. So everyone will take the 100% space. So it will automatically solve the issue. Now here you can see every component It's taking the equal spaces. Okay, perfect. Now let's add one more thing for the gender. Let's add one more row. Here I'll use radio button. Now let's check in Angular for the radio button. Search for the radio button or radio buttons. Okay, we're going to use this basic one. So first we need to import the module. Let's import this module, at radio module. Go to our own module, mat radio. Let's import it here. Now let's come back here and copy the example code. Now let's come to this employee add edit form, and inside this row, let's add it here. Now we need one more thing like mat label, and here I'll give gender, and gender should be in bold. So let's wrap with the B tag, so it automatically will be bold. Now two options. So the first option, value, I want value male in small letter, and the text which will be displayed in UI will be male in capital letter. The same I'll do for female. Female value will be in small and the text. And let's add one more for others. Others. Perfect. Now let's check the UI. Now here you could see gender is also working fine. Let's add more form elements. So let me add one more row. So now I'm going to use one more row, and in this row I'll take two things, education and company name. So for education I'm going to use select, material select. Let's go here and find select. So here I see the select. I'll use the simple select, okay, basic select, and there I'll give the options for all the education option. Let me paste here. Now here you can see the mat select is not working because we haven't imported mat select module. Let's do the same process. Now let's go here, and we see the errors because ng4 and foods, we don't have this variable as of now. So let's delete this, and let's delete this as well. As of now we don't have absence, we have a blank option. Now let's just check. So select is also coming here. We have two issue notice, it's not coming outline, and also we don't have any options. So let's make first outline, and then for each options let's create a variable, education variable here. Type would be string, and inside the array let's give matrix intermediate and diploma. Let's keep diploma before intermediate. Let's add grad. Let's add postgraduate. So these are the list and these are the options I want to give. So for that, let's come to this option, and here for generating multiple options, we could use asterisk ng for let val of education. So it will loop through all the elements of that array. Now every option has value property and it is an input. So we could pass this val. So at each iteration, it will point out to each element. Like in the first, it will point to matrix, then diploma, intermediate, graduate, postgraduate. Now this is the value when user selects, and now we want to show on the UI and val. So this will show on the UI, and if user selects, this value will be passed to the backend. Now let's check the UI now. we could select these options. Now let's fix the label issue. Here, favorite foods instead of favorite foods, education or qualification, education. And here also, I noticed one thing, choose a date, date of birth, birth. Perfect. Now in this row, I want to add one more thing, company name. So that will be the simple form field, a text field. Let's copy this one and paste here and change the name, company, example, Google, I'll give in a placeholder, and by default it would be a text type of input. Now let's add one more row, and this will be the final row, class row, and here I want to add two more form field for experience and package. And finally, package, example, experience 4 and package 12. Inside a package, I also want to give a hint to the user. So mat hint in rupees. So user cannot enter in dollars. Like I'm just giving hint, whatever you are writing, that will be in rupees, in terms of rupees. Okay. Now let's save it and check that. Perfect in rupees. Here you could see the hint as well. And both these fields should be of type number. So let's add type. Press Alt for multiple pointer at the same time. So here I'm giving type number. Perfect. You won't see the much differences on it, but it would be a number type. Like explains this way. So our form is ready. Now let's work on this button. So actually you could see the alignment, little bit of the alignment issues we could see, and I want button should also take the equal space and entire space. Okay. Now let's do this. So action, I'll use this class first. Let's define this class action. I'll take the padding from top. Should I, let's check this. There is no need to take the padding from top. Okay, so 0 px will take. But from left and right, we need some space. So 25 px I want. And also from the bottom, I want 20 px. So this will for the left and right side. And this is for the top and this is for the bottom. Now let's save it. Let's first check it. Yeah, perfect. Now you could see the alignments are perfectly fine. Now, actually in material, angular material, the action, if you use inside a model, they already applied the flex class. So we just need to put button directly, give flex 1. Now let's check it. Now here you could see these are taking the equal spaces. So our form is ready. Now let's bind with the reactive form. For using the reactive form, we need to import a module, reactive form modules. Perfect. Now let's come to this. Let's define a form, p form, form group type will be, and here we are getting the error because it has no initialize. So let's initialize this form. And for me, the best place is to initialize is constructor. But most of the people use also ng on in it. No worry, I'll use constructor emp form, and we don't need to make it optional. I have seen many people make it like optional because they define this form inside ng on it. If you're defining inside a constructor, you don't need to make it as, you don't need to make this optional. Now this dot. Now let's use the service of form builder private. As I said, I always use underscore for service variable form builder. Now this dot fb dot group. Now let's create all the control here, like first name blank, last name, I forgot to put the comma here, email, date of birth, gender, education, the company, then finally package. So now let's bind each of these with our form field. Now here you could see, you notice like we have two sections. We have mat dialog actions and we have mat dialog content. And we have few elements here, our form fields, and the button we have here. So how we will take the form tag? So we cannot take form tag inside this. If we take, we cannot wrap this two button with the form. So let's create the form tag outside of this and wrap with these two, like content as well as with action. Will not get any issue because this don't take any space. Now let's bind this form group emp form. Perfect. Now let's bind each of the control one by one and always bind with the input. So here form control name, first name, and this name is actually should be same with these names. Okay. Make sure that all the names whichever you define whenever you use form control name, this should match 100% with these names. If don't, then it will not work. Okay. Now let's copy this, use for the last name. I remember the name, so I don't need to copy paste here. Email, here I'll use in the input. DOB, in gender, I'll use gender. Here inside the education, in mat select, we'll use, and here I'll use PNI. Here I'll use, here I'll use. Perfect. So we did the bind, and now let's make this save button type as submit. Submit. So whenever I'll click this submit type button inside a form, it will trigger one event which is called ng submit event. So we need to capture here inside the form tag ng submit. So only this event triggers when we click on submit button. So on form submit. Let's create this function. So this function will call whenever the submit event will be triggered. Now let's define this function here. Let's use if this dot employee form valid, then do the console log. As of now, we haven't added any validation, so there won't be any validation error. Then finally, we just want to check the value. Now let's check our form is ready or not. If I click, so here you could see, let's also open the console. So we could see that we make sure that we don't have any issue. Okay, we click it, the form is open. Let's fill with the basic details like date of birth. Let's use today's date of birth, male, education, postgraduate, company Google, experience 4 year, package. Let's add 12 just for example. And if I click on save, here you could see it's coming all the details. Make sure that every details are coming: packages, last name, mail, first name, experience, email, education, DOB, company. So everything is coming. Fine. Right? So our form is working. So our form is ready. Now let's build REST API and server for storing this data. Here I'm going to use JSON server. So JSON server is full fake REST API with zero coding in less than 30 seconds. So you can create a JSON server without any coding. This is created for front-end developers who need a quick backend for prototyping and mocking. So exactly guys, I'll show you how you can create and set up each and everything in this video. So I'm not going to take like 30 seconds, maybe I'll take a little more because I need to explain you guys as well. So the first steps, let's come here, copy this and store globally so that this command will work. Installing this package globally, put -g as an option. So it will install this package globally. So package is installed successfully. Now let's go back to here and you just need to copy one more command. Just this one. Go to your project and type it again. So this command automatically creates a db.json file and here you could see already some default data. How it works, let me explain. So you can see here three URLs already generated. So post, if I call this APIs, if I call the get methods, I'll get all the list of the posts. If I create post, it will add one more post inside this array. So in this way it works. Now let's check this URL first in the browser. So here you can see the exact one entry here. So here also you can see one logs for the get call. Now let's add directly here one more object, employee. I'm keeping this as a blank array. Now save this. Here you could see one more endpoints generated. Now I'm going to use these endpoints. Now let's create service first. Let me rename this as JSON server. Let me add one more. Let's rename this as CLI and keep this running. Now let's come to the CLI and here let me generate one service, ng generate service inside services folder, employee. So service is created successfully. Now let's import one more module because we are going to use HTTP client. For that we need to import HTTP client module first. Now let's go to inside the service file. Here I'm going to inject one service private underscore HTTP client. Perfect. Now let's create first service, add employee. It will take as argument data or payload. Type will be any. Return this dot HTTP dot post. And here we need to pass the URL. And if you remember guys, so this is our URL. And the second parameter we need to pass the data. And this will return observable. So here we could also specify if we want type, return type, observable, and the data type would be any. Now let's call this service method from our component. Now inside this constructor, let's inject our newly created service, private underscore emp service, emp service. Inject this and let's use this. So now here this dot emp service, let's call this method add and pass the value this dot emp form dot value. So we'll pass the value of the form to this and let's subscribe. And inside the subscribe object, define an object like next. If it is success, get the result here. If there is any error, we'll get here. Now if we get the error, let's do the console.log error and whatever the error object will receive. So let's receive the error here. node would be any. Okay. Now, if it is success, now first thing we want to show the message. As of now, what I'm going to use, I'm just going to use alert. Later on, I'll replace this alert with snack bar. Employee added successfully. So employee added successfully. And then what we will do. So here we need a reference of the dialog. For that, we need to inject one more service, private underscore dialog ref. I'm giving name dialog ref, and in type you need to pass this class name, this one. Okay, let's pass here. We got the reference. And now we can close the model. So this dot dialog ref dot close. Perfect. Now let's save this and check everything is compiled successfully. Now let's check in the browser. First clear the log, enter admin @gmail.com, date of birth, let's choose for Jan, mail, postgraduate, company, Google, experience 4, package 12. Let's click on save. So once I click, here you could see the message employee added successfully. Once I click on OK, you could see dialog box is closed. Now let's check our JSON file, db.json file. So here you could see inside this employee array, we got one object, okay, and JSON server generated ID. So this ID is generated by JSON server. They generated ID 1. If I'll add another object, it will show 2. And we could also get this value using this URL employee. If I call this URL now, here you could see the data. So our API is working fine. Now let's try to add one more record here just to verify it. Test user test @gmail.com, date of birth 1 Jan, education mat diploma, company fake 4, and package is 12. Let's click on save. Employee added successfully. Now let's check this URL. Let's hit it again. Now here you could see 2 objects are coming. Now let's verify it again. Check db.json file. Here you could see there is 2 objects inside this employee array and the ID is 2. Perfectly fine. So it is working fine. Now let's build a table. So now what I want to show a table where I'll list all the employee details. Now, for showing the data inside a table, we need to first fetch all the list of employees, then we can show all the data inside a table. So now let's first define a service for getting all the employee list. So inside our service file, let's define one more service, get employee list. We don't need to send any parameter here. We're not going to use post method. We're going to use get and on the same URL. Now let's use this method inside our component. So this time I'm going to work on app.component.ts file here. Inside the constructor, let's first inject our service underscore emp service emp service. Inject here. Now let's create one method inside here, get employee list, and here let's call service method emp service dot get employee list. So this will return an observable. So let's subscribe to this observable, subscribe and handle this. Next, and here we'll get the response. And let's handle the error if we get any error. Error. Now, as of now, we can do the console.log error. So instead of writing like this, we could write in shorthand. So just do console.log and pass the reference of console.log. So it is same as it is. So instead of writing this much of line, we could also write like this. Okay. Now, as of now, just do the console.log just to check that we are getting the data or not. Let's go here. Now, we are not getting data because we haven't called this. So the best place is to inside ng on init. So let's implement ng on inits on init. Okay. Now let's define ng on init just after the constructor. And here let's call the get employee list. That's all. Now let's go back to the UI again. If I come here, so here you can see two items inside an array. So we are getting the data from the servers. Now let's show all these detail inside a table. So for that, I'm going to use mat table. Mat table. Let's first import this mat table module inside our module, app module. Mat table module. Now let's copy the code. So inside the example, I'm going to use an example table which has filter, pagination, and also table with multiple headers, data table with sorting, pagination, and filters. I'm looking for this table. Let me copy this table code here from here. Okay. Let's come to our components. In our case, app component.html. So inside the toolbar, let's paste this code. So we are going to get a lot of errors. So I'm going to fix one by one all these errors. So let's go back to example code. Let's copy all the import first. And we will also import view child. Go to the TS file, paste all the imports and also import view child. Let's go back again and import these 4 lines from here. And before constructor, let's paste it here. Let's delete this one. We are not using anywhere. Now let's make all the field optional by putting exclamation so that we won't get any error. Now we are not going to define any interfaces. So let's make type any as of now. Perfect. Now let's define all the display columns name. So now try to keep all the columns name whichever you get from the APIs and you want to display that. So in our case, if you see the console.log, if you remember, we got two arrays, and let's copy one by one all the fields from here. So first name, last name, email, everything. Okay, first name, last name. Sorry, I haven't written first name, and try to match this with your API keys. So in our case, it should match with all these keys, like first name, it should be exactly same. The last name we have here, email, DOB, gender, education. Save this. So I'll write in the bottom education company experience package. Fine. So we defined all this. Now let's go to get employee list instead of console.log. Here, this dot data source new mat table data source, and here we need to pass the response. So it will create the data source for us. And now this dot data source dot short assign r short this dot short. So this short we are getting from view child. Here we are getting the reference here. So we are assigning this to our table data source. So this will work. Now in the same way, let's do this dot data source dot paginator equal to this dot paginator. Now, now little bit work is done. Still we are getting error because we have to define this apply filter method as well. Now let's go to the definition of material table and copy the definition of apply filter, this one, and paste in our component.ts file. Perfect. Now still we have error because at the end we use paginator, so we need to import this module. Let's import mat paginator module, and also we need to import mat short module, these two. Fine. Now it's compiled successfully. Now let's check the output in the browser. Still we are getting error. Column first name didn't match. So we are getting these kind of errors because we haven't mapped all the data source display columns. So let me tell you guys. Now one by one, we need to define all the fields, whatever we mentioned here, it should be in our UI. We need to map this. So let's go here and delete all the existing one. Like ID column, it's perfectly fine. We have ID. We need to also mention first name here. This name and this name here you mentioned this should match, and this is the name which we display in the UI, so you can change this like first name, and here you can use this dot let row we use here, so let row dot first name. In the same way, uh, there must be two. Okay, first name. Let's remove this percentage sign from here. First name, in the same way we'll do for the last name, and let's delete all these other definition. Okay, multiple select at the same time last name. For doing the multiple select, as I said, we need to press first select this and press Control D. It will do the multiple select. Last name, email, DOB, date of birth, gender, Control D, education, Control D, company, Control plus D, experience, and finally package. Now we need to also update the name which we want to display in the UI. So every field will display like first name, first name, first name. So let's make it like last name. This is used for displaying in the UI. Always remember. Not last name, this one. Actually, let's start from here. last name. I'm writing here email. Here I'm writing DOB. Here I'm writing gender. Here I'm writing education. Company. C on capital letter. Now experience. Just let's write in short form experience. Package. That's all. Now let's check the UI. Perfect. So it's working fine. Now we have few issues, so we'll resolve that as well. So if you see, datas are coming. Now the first thing, dates are coming on UTC format. Let's convert using date pipe. Date. That's all. It will show in this format. If you want to make it format, you can pass the parameter using colon here also. So you can pass the parameter. So let's leave as of now. Now we will also want to show this package as in currency form. So before that, I want to show the rupee sign. So I'll use the currency pipe before the package here. Currency. Now let's see. So it will show in dollar form, but I want in rupees. So let's pass the parameter using colon INR. So it will show in Indian rupee form. Here you could see. Perfect. Now I want to show L after this number. So it will show in lakhs. So let's put the L in capital letter after this double curly braces. So it will append that. Perfect, fine. Now let's make this filter to stretch to the full width. And I don't want table to be stretched till the infinity. So I'll make the width, max width will be 1248 something. Now let's work on this UI issue. So here if you see mat table, let's use this class. Let's define our own class. Mat table container, table container. Perfect. Now we use for filter what we used. Oh, okay. So this is filter is before this table. So don't use this one. Table container. Let's use one more div before this. I'll wrap this with both the thing inside the div. Okay. Now let's use a class here. Main body. And we have mat form field. Okay. So let's go inside this CSS. Go here. Define this class. Max width 1248 px. And also mat form field. Let's copy the name from here. Come here inside this mat form field. Width 100%. And also I want to give padding from top or margin, we could say. Let's add padding. Margin top, padding top. Okay, perfect. 20 px. Now let's look at the design. Now it's coming perfectly fine, but it's not coming in the center. So for making this center, what we'll do, we'll add margin 0 comma auto. Now let's see, it's coming in the center. Now let's add one more column action. There I'll add two button, edit and delete. So let's jump on code first. Go to HTML. Let's add one more row. But Before that, let's go to the app component and here add display columns. Display columns. Just add one more name here. Action. Copy this. And here, let's add action and displayed name will be action on UI. Let's delete this. Let's add button. And this button will be mat icon button. Let's add icon inside here. Mat icon edit. In the same way, let's add one more button. This will be the delete. This is icon name actually. Okay. Now this icon color will be 1. So it will appear on red. And this icon color would be primary. Now let's check on the UI. So here you can see two icons are coming side by side. Now let's add the functionality for edit and delete. So deletes functionalities are very simple. So let's add for this. Let's jump into the code. So first of all, we need to define a service which will delete the data from the server. So let's employee. It will receive ID. Type would be number. It will receive an observable. Type would be any. Now return this dot http dot delete. And here we need to pass the URL. We're going to use the same URL. But this time I'll use backtick so that we could do string interpolation. Here I could add ID. You can also use like plus to concatenate a string. Now it will receive an observable once the employee is deleted successfully. Now let's call this from our component. So this time we have to go into app component.ts file. Here, let's create a delete employee. It will receive ID, number type, and then it will call this dot employee service dot delete employee. And here we need to pass the ID which we'll receive in this function. Now let's do subscribe. Let's call next. So once it is success, get the response here. And if we get any error, we'll get here. So again, we'll do console.log. That's all. Now, once delete is successful, we will show an alert as of now. Later on, as I said, I'll replace with snack bar. So employee deleted. That's all. Now let's check this. Is it working or not? So let's delete this second user. This one. Did I get anything? No, because on click of delete button, I haven't bind this function. So let's call this from that delete icon button. Now let's go here on delete. Let's bind with click event. Click, call this delete. And here we need to pass row dot id. Why row? Because we are receiving here row. Okay, row dot id. Now let's save it. Now click on delete. Here you could see employee deleted successfully. But you see, still we are getting this data. Actually, once we refresh, you will see that the second row is deleted. Now let's write the logic to refresh the UI once we delete. Let's go to the code. Let's go inside delete employee method. And just after the alert, let's refresh the UI. This dot get employee list. So it will automatically refresh the list. Now let's check it again. Now let's add one more user. Final user final @ gmail.com. 1 Jan others intermediate company fake experience 1 package 23. Now let's click on save. Employee added successfully. Model get closed, but still our UI is not refreshed at the time of add as well. So we will write the logic for add, but right now just check for the delete. It's refreshing our UI or not. If I click on delete, employee deleted successfully. Once I click on OK, you can see it's automatically refreshed. Now let's write the logic when we click on add, means once we add the employee successfully, our list should also be refreshed automatically. But here is a little bit trick. Like we are using two different components. Inside the dialog, we are showing this component and the list is showing in app component. So how we could connect these two so this list should automatically get refreshed and this should be notified. You can refresh the list now. For that, let's first work on here, like when we are opening our dialog. So we need to store the reference of this first. Const dialog ref, and we need to listen dialog ref dot after closed. It returns an observable. So let's subscribe for it. And what I will do, get a value here. So what I'll do, whenever I'll close the dialog, I'll return either true or false. So if it's written true, we'll refresh the list. If it false, we will not refresh the list. So if it's true, then we'll call this dot get employee list here as well. Fine. So from where we'll pass the this true and false? From this component. So whenever we close this dialog, we'll pass true from here. True. Why we are getting this error? It's not authorized. Let's go here. Okay, so this should be mat dialog, not dialog ref. I made a mistake here, guys. It should be mat dialog ref. Okay, actually I imported from this package. This shouldn't be there. It should be mat dialog. Here you could see, and it should be a part of dialog. Now you can see I could pass true here. Now let's see if I pass true, our list should get refreshed. Let me add final user again, final date of birth, anything will be okay. Others, intermediate, company, blah blah, and package. Now let's click on save. If I click OK, you can see lists automatically get refreshed. Still, guys, its refresh is working fine, but we have one more issue here. If we click on cancel button, you can see employee added successfully is calling. Why? Let me explain you why. And it's adding a blank record. Let's delete this. And now let me explain why we are getting this. Because if you see, we haven't added the type. So by default, if we don't add type, the button type, then this button treat itself as a submit button. So let's add the type here and it should be button. Okay. So if it treats itself as a submit button, it triggers ng submit event. That's why if you have seen that even after clicking on cancel button, it's calling to the submit event. Now let's check again. Now if I click on cancel, it's not calling to the submit event, but still it's not working. It's not closing the UI. So here what we could use one thing, mat dialog close attribute, and here we could pass false. Let's make it as input. Sorry, like this. Okay. So it will close the dialog and it will pass the value false. And from here we are passing the value true. Once we close the dialog, and here we are listening to that reference. So once it is closed, we are getting the value here. So if it's true, it will refresh the list. It's false, it will not refresh the list. Now let's check it again. We click on cancel. Perfect. Now if we add the employee detail, Santosh Das das@gmail.com, date of birth, others, not others, let's make it male, postgraduate, company, big company, big company. Just for fun, I'm writing this. One package 123. Let's save it, add it. Now here you could see the third entry is coming here. Now we could delete this final user from the middle. Let's delete it perfectly. So everything is working fine. Even we could search by anything. Fine. Now let's work on edit functionality. So likewise, we do the code for the open dialog box. We'll do the same for the edit, but we have little bit of differences. We don't need to subscribe it again because we already did at the time of open. So uh, we don't need the reference variable, and let's change the name open edit form. And not only will open the emp add edit component, but also will pass the data inside it. So let's pass the second parameter, and here we'll pass the data, and what data, whatever we'll receive in this method. So data type any, and we'll pass here data. Fine. Instead of writing two times data, we could just write data. This is same as we write data colon data. So let's write the data. Okay. Now let's call this from the template. So like we did on click of delete icon, let's create one more click here. We'll paste this open edit, but this time we will pass complete row, not only row.id, we'll pass complete row. So we'll receive here, and we'll pass this to the dialog box. Now how we will receive this data inside a dialog box? Let's go and jump here. We'll use injection token. So at the rate inject, and here we'll use mat dialog data, and either we could use private or public data, and type I'll give any. Now in this way we could receive the data whichever is passed to the dialog box. If nothing, then we'll get the undefined here. And private or public, if you want to access the data inside template, then you have to make this public, otherwise this variable isn't accessible inside a template. So now let's patch this value inside a form. So the best place is to do inside from the ng on init. So let's first implement ng on init, implements on init, and let's define just after the constructor ng on init. And here what I will do, this dot emp form dot patch value, and we'll patch the value this dot data. Now let's save it. Now let's check it. If I click on edit, it's not working because we haven't called this edit open edit form from on click off, or we didn't save this form. I think, yeah, we didn't save this. Let's save this. Let's go back here. Here you could see form is coming with all the data, right? Now let's write the logic to update this form whenever we click on save. So instead of save, we need to show update here at the time of edit. So let's first work on changing the name of the save button here inside this add edit form here save. So let's use double tick here. So like now we want to use the data here as well. So we need to make this public, then only we could access public. Okay, every data. So here we could access data. If we have data, then we will show update u capital update. Otherwise we will show save or add. Now let's check it. If we click on here, it shows save. If we click on here, it shows update. Fine. Now in the same way, we will write the logic. So whenever user clicks on save, then this on form submit methods get triggered. So inside this, after the validations, as of now, we haven't added any validations, but if you have validation, so after the validation, we'll put one more condition. If this dot data, if we have data, then else if we don't have the data. So this part, if we don't have the data, then we will add. So let's keep this inside an else part. And in the same way, let's do for update. But we need to first define the services because we only defined as of now add employee service. We don't have any service for update. So let's write for the update. In update, we will receive two things: ID. Each row is uniquely identified by the ID. So which ID we want to update and what is the data we want to update. So here we need to change this to put, and let's add the ID. So if you want to add the ID, then single quote will not work. We need to use the backtick to concatenate the string here. So let's pass the ID and whatever the data we receive from the form. Okay, let's change the method name here, update employee. Now let's call this, first save this. Let's go back here. And now this time I will call this update employee. We are getting the error here because we are sending the form value, updated form value, and we need to also pass the ID. So this dot data dot ID will pass ID from here, and whatever the updated value will pass here. Fine. So this will update. Now let's change the matches message updated. Let's remove the successfully also. Employee updated. Employee detail updated. Let's make it detail updated. Fine. And also I'm passing true here. So once I pass the true, it will automatically refresh the list in app component. Fine. Everything is fine. It's look good. Now let's check it. If I click on edit, I get the detail. Let's edit to Santosh Das. Sir, I'll change this postgraduate to graduate, big company to new company. Also, let's experience 12 and packages 125. 125. Let's update this. At the time of update or any operations you do, I always highly recommend to check your console and network tab if you're doing any work. So let's clear it. If I click on update, employee details updated. Here you could see successfully also the API. And if I click on OK, so here you could see the details get updated. Still it shows postgraduates, big company. I think I updated to graduate, right? Still it's showing postgraduates. Do we have any issue on education variable? Graduate. I think I have updated, right? Let's check it. Is it working or not? Graduate. Big company. So, okay. I think our list didn't get refreshed. Now let's change to postgraduate. Update. Updated successfully. But list didn't get refreshed. Why? Okay, so we need to keep the reference here as well. I got the issue actually. Uh, yeah, we open this dialog from here as well. So we need to keep the reference here as well, like we did previously here, right? So let's copy this code. Let's go to the bottom because this returns a new reference. So we need to store the reference as well. Const. Oh, we have to do this. Actually, we don't need to write this twice. We can we can do at once only. I will optimize this code at the end of this video. Let's first work on it. Now let's check it. If I click on edit, postgraduate to graduate, new company to, okay, let's make it 12 and update. If I click on OK, now here you could see it's update on real time, right? So it's working fine. So everything as of now we worked successfully. Everything is working successfully. Now let's work on snack bar first. So let's go here and search for snack bar. Snack bar, where's snack bar? Here. So if you see the example, So something like this I want to use instead of alert. Okay. Now let's copy this module first. So we need to import this module inside our module. Let's go to app module, import here, snack bar, imported this in our module. Now let's create a separate folder. Actually in real project, I create a separate module, core module. There we keep this snack bar. But as of now, let's create a folder core. There I will add service. Let's go to the CLI, ng generate service inside core folder slash core service. Core service created successfully. Now inside this service, let's first import a snack bar. Now let's jump on the example code of snack bar. If you don't remember the syntax, so you can jump here and look at the snack bar. So we need to first import the snack bar service. So let's copy from here. We already imported the modules. This will work. Now let's import this class. Now in the same way, let's open snack bar. Let's define this. So here you could see open from component. We don't want to open from the component. Open, just open, and we'll pass the message here. Open. That's it. And whatever the message we will receive here. So for the durations, we'll give 1 second. 1000 millisecond is equal to 1 second duration, and message. Message. So we'll pass the message here. Message, and second action. Action is like okay, done, whatever you want to pass here. So action. Second parameter, let me pass to action. And third one is optional, and we could pass the configuration, how much time it will be visible. So let's first give the type here. We are getting some issues. Any, any, or we'll give a string for both. A string. Fine. So configuration. So this is optional. So we need to pass configurations here. Just click. So you can see many options we have, like vertical position. I want to make it on top, not in the bottom. So by default, it's showing the bottom, right? So that's all. Now we need to inject this service, core service, and we can use this everywhere. So let's inject core service in first, like app component. We already imported a lot of services. Private core service, core service. We injected this. Now let's replace the alert wherever we use alert. Here we use, right? So this dot core service dot open snack bar. Here we will pass employee deleted. First this one, and then we'll pass action as okay or done, or done. Let's make the second variable optional. If action is not passed, by default it would be okay. If it's passed, then it will be done. Now in the same way, let's call in another places as well. So we replace it. Let's delete this now. Then okay, this is done. Now let's go to add employee here. Here also we need to inject this service. So after this, we'll inject private underscore core service, core service, and then let's replace wherever we use. So let's change the message. Second one become optional. If we don't pass, by default it would be okay. Now let's copy this from here. Also use alert here. Let's change this to alert. It's very simple, guys. Now save this. So hope we have removed all the alerts. Now let's check it. First check in the console, is compiled successfully or not? Yes, it's compiled successfully. Now let's go here. First add Prabhat Behera Prabhat @gmail.com. Date of birth, mail, education, postgraduate, company, fan, experience 3, package 34. Now let's click on save. So here you could see, we see the snack bar on top. Now let's edit it and see this. Instead of postgraduate, just change it to graduate and update. Oh, so we haven't removed from the update one. Employee updated. I think it's double. Alert is here still. So we place the alert successfully, and let's check at the time of delete. Yes, employee deleted successfully. Now we can add one more thing, guys. We cannot do the delete operation directly. Instead of that, we need to show an dialog box where user need to confirm. Do you really want to delete with a warning icon? Because delete is a little sensitive operation, so you cannot directly if someone accidentally click on, then still your row will be deleted. So make sure we don't do this. But this is a task for you guys. You can do that like I did. So thank you guys for watching this video. Hope you enjoyed, and don't forget to like, share and subscribe my video. I really work hard to make this video.